Hey guys, so it's Kim here, and we have a special day today because we have my dear friend who is known as Elfgrove or Elf from the Green Lantern fandom, the animated series. And y'all don't understand. For those of you that don't know, I'm going to explain some things and then I'm going to stop talking and then should I call you Elf or Elfie or
Elf or Elfie is good.
Elf or Elfie? Okay. Um, I don't know if some of you guys were here, but around 2011 to 2013, I was down bad for this show because it had just super good writing, characters, relationships. It was just basically like the second coming of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I don't think I felt that kind of feeling for any show since then. Maybe the Owl House or Steven Universe or other, we'll watch. My husband and I will watch some things, but nothing like the fire that ignited in my heart when I watched the show. We had like a very small, tight-knit fandom where people were just so creative and so close with each other. And like newsflash, one of the characters came back in a season of Young Justice recently, and we all, I speak for everybody, we all lost our goddamn minds. So and Elf was a big part of a big moderating and tender force for love and justice in this small little fandom. And she is here with us today to talk about her art and her experiences and some Green Lantern rantings that we're just gonna go nuts. How are you today? What would you like to tell the listeners about yourself?
Hey, everybody. So, as Kim said, I'm Elfie. I ran the Green Lantern TAS Tumblr way back in the day. So I had other people come and go as mods, but 90% of that Tumblr was me.
Yes.
Yeah, which was an entire thing.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. And aside from that, it was a really kind of magical time in the show, and we were discussing a little beforehand, and we'll get into it. But I had just moved cross country from Alabama to San Diego when all this hit, and made some wonderful friends through the fandom. Got to meet some amazing people. There was a group that was run by a friend of mine who's still a friend of mine all these years later, that organized meetups to watch at a animator restaurant hangout in Burbank. And 3 different times I think I drove up to go watch the episodes. So I would leave San Diego at 5 a.m. in the morning and
my gosh. To Moore's Deli?
To Moore's Deli.
Oh my god.
To go watch, and then I'd do that. I'd hang around for a little while, hit the farmers market that was happening right across the street,
right.
and then drive all the way back to San Diego.
Oh geez, the love sustains us better than any like energy drink.
Yeah, but it was great. I got to meet all these wonderful people, got to become friends with Kim and Kevin and co, and also got to meet like some of the wonderful people that worked on the show, who I still occasionally talk to, because like once in a blue moon they'll hit me up for plushies, because I started learning how to make plushies during that time. Like I did art and fan art and fanfic at the time, but at this point most of my creative work is either cosplay or making plushes, all hand sewn. And I learned how to do that making stuff for a show that had no merchandise.
God.
Which is an entire pain point.
This is it's like pain. It's just pain.jpg, where I think, as Elf and I both know, it's all the fans know, that the show basically was an animated series for that what's the actor's name again for the live action, that Green Lantern movie that flopped. And
yeah, so what happened was the Green Lantern movie, they expected it to be a huge hit, to be a big blockbuster, to be their start to being Marvel, and it flopped terribly. I don't know that we can blame Ryan Reynolds, but the movie flopped terribly. They had all this merchandise that they had commissioned and sold to distributors with the intent of it. And I'm sorry, I'm talking over you, Kim.
No, you're fine. No, I'm listening too, because this is interesting to know.
So
again,
they had all this merchandise that they'd sent out to distributors, and
Mm-hmm.
they ordered the numbers like they were expecting a blockbuster, like a Transformer, like a Marvel movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie flopped. The stuff sat on shelves and just sat there, and they could not sell it. They could not sell it even at bargain bin prices. And so the cartoon got greenlit while before the movie released, because their intention was, oh hey, this movie's going to release, it's going to be blockbuster, we're going to have kids wanting to get into Green Lantern, so let's greenlight a Green Lantern cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it got greenlit.
Oh
But then
boy.
it was essentially dead in the water, because even though they prototyped toys for Green Lantern, every retailer said, we've still got stuff on the shelves from this other thing that was terrible. Customers aren't going to know the difference. They're not going to care about a difference. We still can't get the stuff off our shelves that we have. No, we're not taking it. So it never went to production. And so, and because of how cartoons worked, I don't know if it still works that way today, because I'm a little out of the loop these days.
It's
But
fine. It's okay.
it's been a decade. But because they couldn't get toys on the shelves, like what we get, the McDonald's toys and then the $150 maquettes. And those were the only merchandise we got aside from the soundtrack.
Yeah, no hoodies, no lunch boxes, no art books, no comics.
Well, we got the comics, but
we got like 3 or 4 comics.
Were written by an entirely different team without consulting the people that wrote Green Lantern, the cartoon. So they're wild. They're just out there in their own little world. They're their own AU. Yeah. They're well-meaning, but oh my god, what the hell? Sorry,
I did like the art. And language is fine, but like, yeah,
and 50% of them.
Yeah, I did like the art and the story, and some of them there was like one that was like, oh, let me see that. Oh yeah, and it became like new fandom like fodder and stuff. So
yeah, the art in some of them was good, but yeah, basically because it could never produce merch, it never sold merch, so there was never the profits to justify a second season, which is why we have no second season.
Yeah, it's
kind of dead before it started.
Yeah, it was like being in love with somebody that's like, okay, I'm only going to be here on this earth for another like 30 days, and you have 30 days to fall in love with me. And guess what? We all fell in love with this person.
Right? Like, and coming in as somebody who actively did not like Green Lanterns, and I tried it, and I'm just like, oh no, I love them now, and I've got a tattoo.
Jeez, like I'm considering one actually as well, but I think it's sort of like, I understand, and I want to talk more about like your art as well, but like I understand that, and this is such a small portion of any fandom thing compared to like big fandom stuff, but I feel like the small fandom stuff was a microcosm for what was happening in bigger fandoms. And definitely I know there were Green Lantern fans who were just in it for just Razer and Aya, the 2 characters that we do nothing but ship them all day long in our all day. God, but like, yeah, and then there were people that were like, oh, I'm a comic book Green Lantern fan too, and I really like the cartoon show, it was amazing. Or they like it because they like animation, or it's like, hey, I liked Avatar Last Airbender, I've heard good things, let me watch also Green Lantern. And then there were people who liked both YJ, Young Justice, and Green Lantern. And then there were the YJ fans who have no idea what's going on with Green Lantern.
Or the ones that actively trashed it and refused to give it a chance to.
I mean, I can't blame them, because I tried to get past season 1 of Young Justice, and I guess
they were 2 very different storytelling
different
styles,
things, and
which is like, it's fair. It's not for everybody.
It's fair. It's just depends on your taste. Like, I'm not going to trash it. I think it just needs to be in the right mood, and it's just a lot of episodes. So it's kind of like why I haven't gotten into Clone Wars, and other Clone Wars people, like one of our other friends, she got into Clone Wars, and she was like, oh, let me check out, Green Lantern, and then she was like, I love it now. So it was like that. But I think we're sort of seeing, like, there was also Green Lantern comic book fans that are like, oh, here they are again, the GLTAS fans who are just like, there's rules to this. Why is Razer blue and red? And then never mind that Kyle Rayner was like a White Lantern that had powers of all the. This is all space it's all space magic, y'all. But
it's all space magic. It's comics, and this is an AU of comics. Like, we can make up whatever works. Like,
and it's just like John Carter wrote it. It's fine, but like. but it's sort of being biased, and I understand that I can't look at things purely from my own fandom goggles, but at the same time, the trash can is big enough for all of us. Okay, that's what my husband
Right.
said. The
And
garbage gets in the trash for
there's
me.
that we were talking about Bruce Timm earlier, and like there's that one Batman the Animated Series thing episode
because he was a
of
producer on GLTAS, right?
yeah, he was one of the producers. And but he had a Batman version of Mr. Mitzelpick, or I cannot pronounce that because it's not supposed to be pronounceable.
Yeah.
But he came in and there was like an entire like convention room full of like people dressed as Batman. It's like, that's not my Batman. He's like, actually the magic of Batman is it's been through so many versions and so many iterations that there is a version of Batman that fits everybody's preferences.
Yeah. And I think
so I mean this is the same thing. And honestly, like my friends that I do that like were into Green Lantern before me and are massive Green Lantern fans, they're like, yeah, sure, it doesn't fit well within Green Lantern comics rules, but they're like, you know what, it's the best they tell me it's the best animated interpretation of the spirit of Green Lantern.
Yeah. And I think just the sort of balance between like, oh, this is a whole new thing versus these are the rules so far, and then these are the sort of intricacies that happen within like the bottleneck of like the relationships in the ship, and then there's a new planet, there's the back on Earth, and then what's killing me inside Smalls is that if we had an approved season 2, they would have resolved this by season 2. If we had another 13 episodes, they would have resolved this. Razer and Aya would be married by now with like 3.2 robot children. It's fine. Like it's like 2.5.
We'd probably have Razer and Aya together. We'd have an entire storyline because they were building for the Black and White Lantern Corps. They were going to bring Sinestro in.
Because Kyle Rayner, Jon Stewart.
And honestly, like one thing they did that was really amazing, which like folk that weren't watching at the time won't remember, is at the time, I don't know if it's still true now, obviously, but Red Lanterns had no nuance in comics at the time. They were just essentially rage zombies with no minds.
They were mustache twirling. Yeah.
They were mustache twirling. They weren't even mustache twirling. They were literally mindless. Only the leader of the Red Lanterns, Atrocitus, could think. The rest of them literally were so fueled by rage they could not think or logic.
Yeah.
And so they created this complex version of Red Lanterns. And yeah, maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm like, they created their own version of canon, which I think has its own value.
Yeah. Because goodness knows I can't think when I'm in rage, which is, in the news these days. But like, I do know that there's a legitimate critique for like Atrocitus is, spoiler alert, in the comics, his wife and daughter died. So it doesn't make much sense for him to be like, well, I do that to you too here now, Razer. And it's like, I get it. Yeah, sure. But
it's different versions of them, different universes. Like, as much as DC has had so many crisis on whatever Earth, Final Crisis, etc.
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to handle the concept of multiple universes, multiple continuities. It's comics. The fact that it's been running for longer than I've been alive, which is quite a while, it means that the continuity, even within comics, is a mess. And any comic reader worth their salt, you get into it and you start going, you start picking and choosing which issues you're like, and this fits within my accepted continuity, and this picks within my accepted continuity, and this is trash.
I will pick this one, and I will pick this one, not this one. I will pick this one. It's just
because even before I started watching this show, I was a huge fan of the Flash family in DC Comics.
Yeah.
And there was plenty of stuff like I cannot personally like Jeff Johns, great with his Lantern stories. His Flash stories, to my mind, absolute trash.
No.
I know other people love them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this Flash stuff that I pick up and accept is largely like the Mark Waid runs.
Yeah. It's very much like
because they
it's my opinion, you know, like it's the my opinion.
and because they've been running for decades, they contradict each other. So you pick and choose what you like, and whatever you like is whatever works. Because it's comic books, it's going to reboot in 3 years.
It's the Western comic book scene. Like people joke a lot about, oh, if I want to read One Piece, where do I start? One Piece Volume 1, you know.
No, but that's a serious problem with Western comics.
Yeah, and if you want to read,
they're really inaccessible.
I was in the comic book store the other day, and I was like, okay, where do I start reading Green Lantern? And they were like, okay, first you got to start off with this other thing. Here, let me go get it. Like, you got to start off with reading,
and they'll hand you $200 worth of books,
and it's
to try to get
the Silver Age, Sector 2814, and then now there's the whole new Emerald Knights, and then there's John Stewart, there's Emerald Knights. I don't know what the hell is going on, and I really do kind of want to see what's going on with Jessica Cruz.
Yeah, little I know of Jessica Cruz, she seems awesome, and a really neat way of actually bothering to explore the fact that it's not an absence of fear, it's the ability to overcome it, because she's like someone with severe anxiety.
Yeah, she doesn't want to leave her house, and it's just like, wow, amazing, you know. And then John Stewart is, we could have gotten John Stewart.
Oh yeah, they've said that like the reason they had the John Stewart reference in the finale was because they intended to bring him in.
No, I hate it.
It makes me so sad we never got that continuation.
Yeah, it feels like, I think for GLTAS fans, I feel like it getting canceled before it could even like live its life. Well, it did live its life, because that's why we're here. Kitten time. But the baby cat was not able to hunt and do all sorts of things. And I also want to like touch upon what kind of art were you into making for, like, not just Green Lantern, but like in general, because I have some plushies I have the Razer plushie is staring at me from the other end of the room over there, and I'll bring it in a little bit. I'll turn off my camera, I'll go get it. But go ahead and share what kind of like things you were inspired to make through the show. Did you start through the show, or was it like other things?
I started through the show. Like, I knew that my brother had recently gotten married when all this was airing.
Yeah.
And I knew that he wanted kids where I did not.
Yes.
And I was just like, hey, I want to be the aunt that spoils my niece or nephew or whatever nibbling I get absolutely rotten, and I want to be able to make them whatever plush they can come up with.
Yes.
So I made something out of a book as a test run, and then I started literally the next plush I made was the first Zelias Zox plush.
Yes, I remember.
And I made Zelias Zox because I sent out a message, I think it was on Twitter, that said, hey, because I was at that point, we were already interacting with a lot of the staff. I'm like, hey, if you guys could have a plush of one of the characters, who would you want? And I think it was Sam Liu that went, Zelias Zox. I'm like, okay, he's a ball. That's not too bad. That's doable. And so I made one, and then I made 6. And I'm like, where do I send these? And I shipped them off to Warner Brothers, and they ended up in the hands of Ernie Altbacker, I think, has one. Sam Liu one. Rick Morales has one. Giancarlo and Jim each have one. I think Bruce Timm got the last one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
But that started me. I'm like, hey, and hilariously, I save all of my plush patterns now.
That's good. That's good.
Zelias Zox is one of the few I cannot recreate.
Yes.
I did not save his pattern. I have the base pattern, but the tricky part of it was the nose, which I freehanded, and there's no pattern for me to ever be able to recreate that nose.
Oh my God. I'm
so
sorry.
I cannot remake that plush ever.
Sorry,
no. Not have it be the same plush.
It'll be the new 52 for the new 52 version of Zelias. But speaking of plushies, you made this.
Oh my God!
I remember this baby. It's Razer.
I think I made
with the ears and everything, like the bunny ears.
Does that one have wires in the ears or no?
Yes, it does. Yeah, and so Yeah, I think it
Yeah, I
folds.
think I only made 2 like that. Maybe 3.
I think it came from somebody, I think it's Codex Apollo on Tumblr,
Yeah,
made
Codex Apollo
patterns.
made
Yeah.
the design, and I explicitly got their permission to make their design as a plush.
Yeah. And so their patterns, or I think I
Yeah, so
made,
it's foam in there, and then it's
yeah,
wire to keep
squishy.
to shape
Yeah.
it.
And I made an Aya plush when I first went out
Yes,
to
I have the
California. Yeah.
Aya.
Where is she?
Let me see if I can
Yeah,
find her.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
realize I needed to go gather my plushes. Hold
Sorry,
on.
we're like, it's like house tour. Sorry.
Let's see. Let's see what's up
If she's
here.
not, if she's not there, it's okay.
So
I will
let's
find
see.
you,
Hold on,
Aya.
I'm walking around
I
gathering
will
things.
find you.
I've got Kilowog, I've got Lanos.
Oh
Oh,
God,
I
Lanos, the
don't
Aya of
see
Lanos.
Aya. I
Oh,
know she's around here somewhere though.
I
I
I
have
have hope.
definitely kept
I have
I
hope you will
definitely
find
kept that.
that. But anyway, like while
Yeah,
you're looking, I know that. Do you feel like there was like a surge of creative energy through
it was
experience?
just
Yeah,
especially when I realized it didn't have merchandise and it wasn't going to be
yeah.
getting any.
Mm-hmm.
I just really felt like it was super
Oh,
important. So, like part of it was I wanted to learn how to do this, and this was a great way to do it. And it's hilarious looking back at my old plushes now because they're all in like felt and Arctic fleece.
yeah. Did
And I work
yeah,
almost exclusively in Minky now, so I'm like,
yeah.
my stuff is so much better than it was back then.
Well, your
Huh,
art,
there she is.
there she is. She's here. Aya, I've been looking for you all this time. Where were you? Oh my gosh, I remember how I sewed that by hand, and I was like, okay, it's hours before my flight into to California. I was just gonna go to Joann's fabric store, and then I just like drew the stuff on and then like sewed it by hand. Let's
It looks so cute. I'm
It's so
so glad you
cute.
have it.
Yeah, and so I'm so glad it's off to a good home, and someday maybe we can have a reunion. We can make another Aya and
Okay, and
another
so
Razer
here's the
for you.
fun thing. Here's my
Yeah,
other Green
yeah,
Lantern plushes I have over
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. Elenos. Aya, oh, ball Aya. Kilowatt.
Yeah, and this was actually supposed to be part of a giveaway that I ended up like life got chaotic and it never went
I
out, and
gotcha.
I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, he mine now.
He is yours to enjoy. Yes. I have to admit, like Razer was sitting in the corner for like dusty, because I think it's sort of like the fact that, well, the show's never coming back, and
Mhm.
the friendships and relationships have changed. So I feel a little bit sad when looking at it. But then the new content dropped, and so I was like, oh God, it's like I felt like that same in me again, like the same fire like explode inside of me, and it's just like head empty, brain smooth, only full of Green Lantern. It's I think it's just sort of my brain, how my brain works with like the hyperfixations and stuff. But I think you experienced a little bit of that too,
I
right?
did
Yeah.
experience a little bit of that because like I saw someone post is like, is that? And I'm like, I think I saw you post like, is that
Yeah.
such and such? Like, and I'd been like working on plushes actually.
Yeah, you were making the Loth cats. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still making loft
Okay,
cats.
good. There we go. Yeah.
But no, but like I just happened to check Twitter and saw that tweet, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
No, can't be. I'm like, well, it looks like him, maybe. And then John Carl,
Yeah.
he's like, this gives me hope, and I'm like, you.
You.
Like the moment he posted, I'm like,
I know.
that's exactly who that is.
Yeah, I know Theozilla on
I didn't
Twitter.
realize it was
Yeah.
posting that night though. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was premiering that night.
I was just floored. Like
So I didn't
Theozilla
realize that it had
messaged me.
posted the episode
Yeah.
until I got to work the next day, and I'm sitting here like, throw together a post for the blog from the
After
office.
several years. Yeah, and so yeah, Theozilla was like messaging me, hey, just so you know, this is the new Young Justice episode. And I wouldn't have known this stuff was happening because I don't watch Young Justice,
I
I
don't
guess.
either.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't have known that Razer was coming in there, and I was like, hold up, what? Hello? Yes. And then he was like, yeah, there was Razer, take a look at this. And it was the French trailer. It was the French trailer for, and then a point second, like a second of like a spoiler image. I don't know why they put that in there. It's such a spoilery image of of Razer turning
Of
into
him and the red and blue combo.
red and blue, and I'm just like, hold up, hold the hell up, like, because, and after that, I was like, guys, hello, it's the scene from Jodie Foster's Contact, where she's like hearing the boom, 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 and she's like, 18 hours, 34 seconds, 53 minutes. Hello, it's 2 a.m. Is anybody awake? Like my friend, and they were like, huh? What? And my friend who lives like maybe 45 minutes from me here in Texas in LaPorte, she was like just screaming with her spouse, like, it's time to wake up. Razor's back. What? Razor's back. And it was just like, like no time has passed. It's been 10 years, almost 10 years. No time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
God, just the overflow of emotions. I feel like, in what ways, and not just through Green Lantern, how have certain media, what are the kinds of like things in media that draw you to these type of stories? Like what are the hits, that the green lights or the green flags that hit for you narratively, that help you creatively, inspire you?
It's hard to say. I mean, I'm always really drawn to stuff that is very explicit about things not being as simple as good versus evil.
Yeah.
And like that was obviously something this show did very, very well.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, my entire thing is always, I'm drawn to when I can connect to characters.
Yes.
You can have the best world building, but if your characters are flat, I cannot get into it. And there's certain writers that are really prolific, really well known, that like people recommend it to me, and I've tried it multiple times. I'm just like, they do great world building. I would love to learn more about this world, but I cannot deal with these characters.
Yeah.
I don't like them. If I actively dislike all of your characters, if I don't have like one or two I can latch onto and feel some sort of attachment or kinship with, like I can't get into it.
Yeah.
But as long as there's like one or two characters I can get into, I can watch a show.
Yeah.
Now, and you get into that and you start getting into complex messages about, how the world works, how things aren't, super simple. If you have dealing with emotional trauma and stuff, and is it not being a straight line of healing, like that stuff like gets into my brain.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's it's stuff that's affecting, but also sensitive and nuanced. I think sort of like, and we talk about it a lot, I think, in past our old baby podcasts from before 9 years ago, but
oh god,
I can't even open it now because it's a GarageBand unupdated file, and so I have to get those files again and listen, and then I'm gonna cry again. But we talked about that.
And I remember bringing up terrible things during that whole time.
No, me too. No, I was nuts. Still am, but that was a different brand of like unhinged back then. And right. I think it's valid to say that when I watched parts of Green Lantern, that maybe there are things and episodes in there because you realize, oh yeah, this show is written on most part by white cis straight guys, and especially like the Star Sapphire episode, like it's like, but yeah,
I give a lot of credit to the writers that when we called them out on that one inconsistency with the Star Sapphire episode, the head writer Jim Krieg's like, you know what, yeah, y'all are right, it should have been this way, like our bad. So like it was nice to be able to have that conversation of the fans critiquing something and them going, hey, yeah, okay, we can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, you're correct. And it's sort of like,
but it also wasn't like vicious thing like, this is horrible, it's the worst thing ever. No, it's just like,
yeah, and it's like we were
jive.
Yeah, it's just we were I think we also experienced that when you watch anime from the 90s, or even if you watch anime from now, there are things where it's like, oh right, this thing here again, and you gloss
things
past
are very much a product of their time and
and their place and their culture. And
like if GLTAS was airing and starting now, we'd probably have some openly queer characters. They'd probably make it like, knowing the people that were behind it, or at least knowing them back then, I feel like they're the type of people that would have made an open effort to include, like, at least as secondary characters, more actively queer characters.
Yeah.
Like,
and I
know they tried to include more, non-white characters, but that was hit and miss. I'm gonna have to
and
move and plug in, so hold on.
no, yeah, you're fine. And I think sort of there's moments where you realize I can see where these writers had influences, like, you know, a lot of Flash Gordon, Star Wars, the original, other than the Jeff Johns comics and everything. While when the fandom and the fangirls, and I'm just talking from my own experience in their small little niche, I'm not talking about like a larger balloon around it, but like our influences were like early 2010s animes, and you know, like Revolutionary Girl Utena, like Madoka was coming around at that time. Gurren Lagann was still which is basically Green Lantern anime from Trigger Studio. Like it's, and so we had a whole different set of influences that we were able to connect with to the show, which connected to the Flash Gordon and Bruce Timm and Batman Toss influences from that time. And we all had those experiences with those things too, but I think it made it all the more richer experience for all of us to be able to say some things, I think. And now when we watch something like maybe Owl House, you realize, oh, or like Pixar was one way years ago with like The Incredibles, and now we're watching Turning Red, and it's so different, where it's like women of color writing a show. It's like the sensibilities are completely different.
It makes a massive difference. Ignore me as I'm like moving my camera around.
No, I get to see like the cat ears and everything, but yeah,
my silly things. Okay, there, now I'm comfortable.
Were there any and there's things you don't want to talk about, that is, just talk about the things that you like and are comfortable with. Are there any sort of like life experiences that have affected your art and how you process things? And I think you've talked about it already in the past question. Life experiences that affected your art and yourself a lot, and how you carried yourself in fandom, and like Green Lantern, how you connected with that and everything.
Well, I think like one of the things we talked about is like I'm a couple of years older than a lot of the people that are fandom. So I felt like I had a slightly more more chill perspective on things, but also like just fandom and moving out here from the South, like I figured out a lot of things about queerness and all this stuff. But I was also dealing with things like my father had died not that many years ago by suicide, and then I'm sorry. And so I was still dealing with all the aftermath of that. And God, I look really yellow.
that light here. Well, we're there. We're matching. I get it.
But and then like I'd also just moved cross country by myself, so I was trying to.
That's a big deal.
It is. It's a huge deal, and basically starting my life over. So it's just the entire like. There's just a lot of life changes, and I think everyone tends to gravitate towards media that speaks to them and whatever life change they're going through at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so at the time, I needed that message of, hey, no matter how bad things are, you don't give up. You go and fix things.
Yeah.
And things it's not as simple of this person's wrong and this person's right. And those things, it meant a lot to me. It spoke a lot to me. And especially as I'd moved, I got into, as we talked before, I got into my plush making partially with the intention of being able to spoil my niece when she got here. But it was also about, I had just separated from my family. It was me building skills, so I felt like I could still be connected to my family in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that with me and us. And we were all, I think, going through like a transitional period around the 2011s, 2013 eras. Like I was still figuring out my animation dreams, or where I wanted to take my art, and I wasn't in a place where I could financially or even like geographically do any of that.
Right.
And you know, and then suddenly, not that like Green Lantern saved the day, but it was more like I watched it and I realized no matter how different the writer's experiences or the artist's experiences were, I still could connect with, for example, the Red Lanterns were justified in their anger. and reparations are being made.
And honestly, it was
yeah.
such a vital and important part that we got to that
Yeah.
mid-season section. And like, yeah, they beat the Red Lanterns. They stopped them from committing like even more genocide than they already had. But they're also just like you had the lead character, the one that's going to be the hero to all these like young kids they're watching it. He looks at it, he's like, you know what? You were right. Like the way you went about it was wrong, but you were right. And you had Ganthet and Saeed going, history is written or unwritten by the victors. And that's so important even today.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought, like, what a unexpected, like you see the look of the show, and I know they made it that way for a reason, but like be so like written so with such sophistication and that kind of thing. And I was just like, whoa, I underestimated, like, you know, not that I'm the type of person that only watches like children's cartoons for that kind of thing, but I think it struck me like I really needed them to say that. And also I think it's sort of unavoidable that, okay, we're going to talk about Razer and Aya now, the sort of thing where it was not triggering for me, but it was sort of like I had to watch two characters fall in love, and then one of them just hates themselves so much that they decide to self-sabotage any sort of like potential for like I could actually be happy with this other person, and they make me happy, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to get hurt again. And so it's like, I do not love you and I can't love you, you're just a machine. And then she's like, time to destroy the universe. And it's like, can relate. And you know, and that's like, yeah. And I hate that they kind of left it hanging like that, because I know they didn't want to, but dang.
Like, I hate that they left it hanging, but if they had to leave it hanging, I felt like it was still a hopeful place to leave it.
Yeah.
Which like I think helped so much. Excuse you. I've got a kitten walking through my lap.
Cat being cat. And I have a cat over there too being cat. But oh geez. I think if anything, it just reminded me of how lucky I am to be in a place where I could connect with people, and whether or not I still can with somebody else, it still gives me that hope as well. And so Elf, thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to talk with us today.
Thank you for inviting me on.
and just reminding me of all the good memories and why I create and why I enjoy connecting with people. Where is there anything you'd like to say, or where we can connect with you and your art or your plush making?
So for my plush making, probably the best place to find it's my Instagram. It's ELFPLUSH. So it's Elf Plush.
And I'll link it in the description.
So, I mean, other than that, like all my other social media is just me being a shit poster. So, so that's the only place that really needs to be linked.
Yeah. But thank you so much, and thank you guys for listening. I appreciate y'all. Goodbye. Bye. Bye. Razer says goodbye.
Oh, I'm so glad you still have that all these years later.
I know.